Economists have had different takes as whether the budget would contribute to inflation. Barrenjoey Chief Economist Joe Masters has been running the ruler over the budget and joins me now. Thanks for your time. I guess, first of all, just as to whether this will be inflationary, we won't really ever know. There are so many factors. There are global factors at play as well. I guess if we see inflation really run away, this will be one of the things blamed. But if it just goes up a little bit more than expected, people have different views. There's no definitive way to sort of judge it. Is there in 6 months or is there?
That's right. Economics is as much an art as it is a science, and it's not uncommon to hear economists disagree, and I think healthy debate is a good thing. I guess if we step back and say, what do we know? So we know that the measures around energy bill relief, some of the pharmaceutical and bulk billing measures, and also the rent assistance will reduce measured CPI in FY24. The debate really comes around beyond that, though, and that is that we do have some increase in net government spending. Now, the theory would tell you if the government spends more into the economy, particularly when the economy is already capacity constrained, that's inflationary. And that's true, I don't disagree with that. But when we run it through our modelling, what we find is the impact is only 0.2% over 2 years. So to your point, you know, when inflation's running up around the 6% level, even as it comes down, that's really just a rounding error. And there are many other parts of the economy moving. So I think you're right when you say we'll never really know, but our assessment is that this budget is not inflationary in a concerning way. It doesn't change our own economic outlook or the way we're thinking about monetary policy.
I guess the difference between what you're saying there and what the government's saying is you're actually putting a figure on something. So as you say, the government said energy prices reduced, that's a negative 0.75% on inflation. They didn't tell us what it would do for rent. They also didn't tell us how much of the money saved would go back into the economy. They also didn't tell us how much of the welfare spending, which is just money in people's pockets. I'm not saying that's not a fair policy when people are doing it tough, but it's money in the economy. So is the aged care increase. What we never got from Labor, apart from the one singling out on energy prices, was what the whole thing would do to the economy. Given how important inflation is right now, would it have been possible to put out a figure via Treasury? Is it asking too much to have this specific figure? I know forecasts are almost never exactly right, but at least they can go, here's the number.
I've got no doubt that Treasury did a lot of work behind the scenes on this. And you're right, from a media perspective and in the narrative, the story was really around that 0.75 percentage point coming off from energy bills. When we have a look and we model the rental piece and the PBS, for example, we find that those things broadly offset the increase in the tobacco excise. And if you dig deep into the budget papers, there is a line in there that says Treasury estimates that broadly those counteracting inflationary sort of factors leave you with just the energy bill relief. So perhaps it seems a bit simplistic, but I'm sure the work was done. And some of that, I guess, was to allow other parts of the budget narrative to shine, the cost of living, also the debt repayment and the improved fiscal outcome.
Yeah, and look, to me, it just reminds me of the line, if you ask someone how they went at the racetrack, they say about even. I know Treasury's spent many more hours on it than that. That might sound flippant. I just wonder if we couldn't have at least got some numbers behind it. Each measure has a little number on it, and then we can, you know, assess them on their merits and have an overall figure. The other interesting thing will be the Fair Work Commission decision on minimum pay, because a big increase last time around. If they come out and sort of say, look, overall, a lot of people doing it tough have had some assistance, including on energy bills and rent, they might recommend a smaller than they would have otherwise increased. That might not make individuals happy, but the government will be able to say, hey, look, here's another factor around inflation that will actually dampen things.
That's right. Wages are probably the most important factor for inflation as we look into the year or two ahead. I mean, we've been talking about the budget, but really what we're seeing in inflation is that goods inflation is clearly coming off as supply chains ease, but services inflation is still accelerating. And wages are the key driver of services inflation. Now, the Fair Work Commission considers a whole range of factors, cost of living, but also the impact on jobs. And I'm sure that they'll be looking at those budget measures. and assessing the impact of that on the cost of living crisis and the impact on those Australians who are on the national or award minimum wage. If we look in the last decade, what we've found is the Fair Work Commission has not delivered an increase to the national minimum wage that's been less than core inflation. So I think we are headed for a reasonably large number in a historical context, but I think we'll also see what we got last year, which was that sort of two-tiered increase.
Right. Yeah, well, that will be really interesting, and if perhaps it's only just keeping in pace with core inflation, given the other assistance available, it'll be an interesting move. We will see, and also see what Labor's submission suggests as well. Joe, thank you.